I'm a tech person. I have been gifted by the ability of to understand technology to a degree. Tahuti blesses me with that, so I'm very thankful. But sometimes technology can be a bad thing because if it controls you, if it now becomes your master and you become a slave to it, it becomes a very bad thing. You should be the master, and the technology, should it be a slave to you? No, I don't think anything. Make sure. Let me scan. I don't think anything should be a slave to you, right? No thing, no person, no anything, right? Because it becomes a very bad situation when there's not um, a what is it? An acknowledgement or an agreement on both ends, right? So you can't have a master slave relationship, and unless you're doing some other stuff, you guys. But you can't have a master slave relationship. Technology, on the other hand, it's one of those things. I had somebody tell me the other day they went to go buy a house and they were asking about the bedrooms. And back in the day, we'd be like, yeah, and the master bedroom. How large is the master bedroom? And I guess this person went to go ask that question, and the realtor was offended and said, "We don't say that. Um, we don't call it the master bedroom. It's called the primary room or something like that." And I was like, "What?" He's like, "Yeah, they got offended. They're like, we don't use the word master." And I'm just like, "Are you kidding me?" And so the world it changes, right? And I think a lot of us see this as we get older. We see that there's these generation spans of time, right? So over the course of 10, 15, 20, 30, right, years or so, um, you will definitely see a change in how society talks, acts, thinks, responds, reacts. All these cause and effect things, right? And I guess master is just not a good thing to use, especially if you're going to buy a house and inquiring about the master bedroom. It's no longer the master bedroom; it's the primary room. The master bedroom now is a is an it indicates some sort of personal subservience or slavery. It's like, this is ridiculous. It's ridiculous. I work with technology. If you have two hard drives in the computer systems, one's the master, one's the slave. Anybody tries to correct me on that or tries to tell me that my definition of this technology is wrong, I'm going to tell them to go to school first about this particular technology and then deduce if the term is incorrect or not. That's a little bit of my rant. There's a lot of technology can be a good thing. I'm going to keep going back to that. That's the Ouroborous that we're in right now, where you start with one thing and then it comes back to that thing after going through a cycle of something. Once again, I do speak cryptic. I am like a sphinx. I am like a Haramaket, which is a sphinx in great Kemetic Egypt. I speak in tongues at time. Well, not like I'm having a possession or a seizure, but I do speak cryptic, and it's because a lot of these things that we talk about require you to think. It's not about just telling you. This is not typical teaching. This is not how teaching started out. And I'm not talking about just with our show or with our channel. I mean, in general, teaching did not start out with trying to stuff information inside of someone. Teaching was, in one of the, I will rarely quote a Greek, right? And if I do quote a Greek, it's got to be a very profound thing. But I can't remember which Greek this was because, once again, I don't try to remember Greek names. I'm just real bad with it. But yeah, I can't remember who it was, but it was one of the teachers, one of the philosophers. It says, um, basically, teaching essentially teaching is about extracting information. And this is a loose quote, right? I'm not quoting it verbatim. But teaching is about extracting the knowledge or the wisdom or the greatness out of a person, not about stuffing something into them, right? And hey, Irma Morales, sorry, I didn't say hello. I kind of was caught up in a train of thought. But teaching is not about stuffing information into people. The system that we have now is questionable at best and has been. And if you look at the origins of the school system and why it was set up, um, granted, you can't pull your kids out of school unless you're independent. If you have like your own finances, money, business, some sort of cash flowing system in order to untether you from, say, like an employer and the schooling system, right? You have to have a way to take care of yourself. But if you knew the truth about the school system and why it was started, you'd be appalled. Um, the way we look back at typically how we look back at ancient cultures, and sorry, just making sure everything's online. When we typically look at ancient cultures, and there's a discrimination or a ignorance about those people, their capabilities, their skill sets, what they were able to do. That's what people are going to do about these time frames that we've gone through in this modern era, right? The whole ideology behind work. I think things are going to change for the good or the worse. We're in a things are always changing, but right now there's a change going on. I don't think this is the most positive change for us overall as humans. I think the change benefits a few elite people of the world who want to control things. And I think it's our job to rebalance when they become overly uh, greedy. It is our job to put them in their place, sort of bring things back balanced, right? As the scales of justice or of Libra, of Matt, the teachings of Matt, things have to be balanced out, right? So I think things after going through all this craziness that we're going through, I think they will be rebalanced out. At what cost and to what effect? No idea, no idea. But the origins of the public education system are just it's it's very human. That's all I can say. It's very human. Um, it's not too far from the beginnings of or the origin of slavery, except for you can only pull that slavery card once, right? You can't pull it on people again because they'll be like, "Hey, that's not legal. That's not done. That's not what we can agree on the surface." And so what happens is the core concept of slavery get repackaged, right? You get another box to put it in. You get another more wrapping paper to put around it. You get another bow to put on it, and then you call it, I don't know, you call it employment. You call it a job. You call it taking care of yourself, which is not necessarily a bad thing. But when you're taking care of yourself and it's causing you to not be able to live your life fully, or it interferes with your life or your freedom or your privileges, then it becomes an issue. And once again, like I said, the origins of the public education system are just disgusting. Basically, it was created because these companies needed workers, um, and I understand the necessity for it, um, but I don't really agree with how it's applied and how it's degraded, and how it's used to keep people beneath others. And once again, that's something you'll have to judge for yourself. Do some education, do some research, look up how the public school system came about, who created it, why it was created, and all that stuff. Very interesting stuff. Um, that's one of my second rant tangents here. So I guess we're gonna get started. It is 6:30 right now on a Sunday. Was thinking, what are we gonna talk about, right? And I was unsure because I wanted to talk about Sunday and how it actually means sun, the sun day. It's the day of the sun. And somebody last week asked me to talk about the colors, right? The different colors and what they meant, what they represented, their symbology, right? And it got me thinking, right? When I first got started with this, all of this, um, I was working a lot with the ancient Egyptian Kemetic energy, and then I came across the ancient, some ancient Mesopotamian Meso-Sumerian or Mesopotamian Sumerian information as well. And I found after working with both of them that they were complementary of one another. They didn't really clash, where the ancient um, Kemetic or ancient Egyptian information was lacking, because that's a very, 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 very old culture where there were pieces that were missing. I found it in the ancient Mesopotamian Sumerian lore, a sort of something simple, or not simple, something similar to it. And so I'd work with the ancient. I worked with the ancient Kemetic energy, and then I would work with the ancient Meso-Sumerian energy. And when I say energy, I'm referring to like meditation. Um, and there's a whole other involvement that comes along with when you work with energy. I mean, it becomes the lore, the information you come across becomes living to you. It's a living lore. The myths, not all of them, but the meanings behind the myths, the stories, the lore, um, they become real. At least the parts of it that are symbolic of something, that are supposed to awaken a part of you. And that's what those myths actually do. They're stories left behind. And stories are interesting because you have the person who told the story, right, the creator, and then you have the person who was handing it down or sharing it. And usually there's that loss of translation between um, when you received some information and then you reiterated it, or you explained it. Usually you changed um, how you originally received it, right? And so that's kind of how some of this works. So with the ancient Mesopotamian energy, I learned a lot that I could not fully find when it came to the ancient Egyptian energy. But once I understood it on the ancient Meso-Sumerian side, then the ancient Kemetic side opened up, and I understood more. And the stuff that I had not understood with ancient Egypt started to open up. And so I was like, well, this is interesting. It paired well together. It was like a meal when you've got like wine, and then you've got like your choice of wine and the meat, the food, right? Red wine goes better with red meat if you're a red meat eater, and white wine goes well with fish, chicken, any of um, the white meat food, right? And so I found that the ancient Meso-Sumerian energy and the ancient Kemetic Egyptian energy paired really well, and that's where we kind of have the ancient Tree of Life channel, right? Um, but the ancient Tree of Life channel actually got started because I was working quite a bit with the ancient Sumerian energy, because I was able to come across more information that it was more readily available. I was following an author who had put out a lot of information, and I was able to read that information, understand it, and internalize it, and um, understand some stuff on the ancient Kemetic side that I didn't before, like I was saying earlier. So if you guys are, if you're out there, welcome to the ancient Tree of Life spiritual show. This is Raia. I'm your presenter, your host. And if you're out there, you got a question, go ahead and raise your hand, or go ahead and say hello, or ask a question. Just go ahead and drop a comment in the box. We are currently live and broadcasting on Instagram, Facebook, Twitch, and Twitter. Not Facebook, because I currently don't have that functionality plugged in right now. Hold on a second, I'm just checking some things. Once again, like I said, what I wanted to talk about today was Sunday being the day of the sun, and what that really actually means, right? Like I said, somebody asked me what the seven colors actually represented, or what they actually meant. And I started thinking I really need to re-explain this. I mean, I have a video on it, but I don't think it's as complete as it should or as it could be. And so I'm gonna have to revisit that. Hold on, I'm just making sure. Okay. Hold on one moment. Okay. So so SunDay, right? I know SunDay has got a lot of it's got a lot of a lot of tradition behind it, right? For some, it's the day to go to church, right? It's God's day, right? It's the day that you go and you worship or you reverence uh, God in a church, and you'll let some preacher or priest, and he sort of will use the term share, right? He shares his information with his people, with his congregation, with the people there, right? And there's a whole other dynamic behind it, but we're not going to get into that, right? We're just going to go to it's usually done on Sunday, right? And then you have some cultures that believe, well, the actual day of worship is Saturday, right? Um, because Saturday would have been the seventh day, right? And Sunday begins the beginning of the day of the week, so it's actually the first day of the week. Or if we get into numerology, um, Sunday actually represents zero, right? And why zero? Simply because zero represents completion. It is the beginning and the end of things, right? Which is why it's a circle, right? It's a circle. Circle that has no beginning, no end. Um, it is complete. It is a symbol of completion. Um, and before, sorry about that, you guys. My sister's just now. She's texting me. Um, so uh, the zero, the numbers are not just numbers because we don't really get into the history. We as people do not get into the history of things, right? We're born into a system, and then the system uses these tools, and we don't really question them. We don't ask where they came from. We assume they've always been used and they were there to facilitate whatever we need to do. But the numbering system is not that way. It actually means something. The ancient peoples worked and spoke in symbols, right? Symbolism a great and powerful way to remember and learn. We remember and learn through symbols way easier than we do, say, like with words, right? And the numbering system is based on symbols, right? So zero is a symbol of a circle, right? Even the symbol for the sun, if you write it, it's a circle with another circle in the middle, or a circle with a dot, right? So it represents completion of things, right? And the dot in the middle pretty much designates it as the sun, right? It's the symbol for the sun. Um, which, if you look at it, it's kind of interesting because I don't know if they knew when they created this symbol of the sun in the middle, or the dot in the middle of the symbol, that the sun was the center of the universe or of our solar system, right? Did they or did they not, right? Well, if they created the symbol, they must have, right? So it becomes interesting then to then question, how did they know? How did the ancient peoples know that the sun was the center of the solar system, right? I mean, you have, and I'm going to try to get this right. I'm bad with certain types of history, but there was I'm not sure if it was Spanish. There was this was it Galileo? I can't remember. I can't remember if it was Galileo or not. Who? Let me look it up. Hold on. No, it's not Galileo. I can't remember who it is, but there was at one point where people thought not that the sun was the center of the solar system, right? Well, that Earth was, and that all the things spun around Earth, including the sun, right? And if you look outside and you watch the sun kind of come up and go down, and the moon come up and go down, and the stars come up and go down. Well, actually, the stars don't come up and go down; they kind of appear and disappear, right? So does the moon too. He kind of moves, but he kind of appears and disappears. But the sun, it looks like it's kind of moving around you. And if you looked at something from the surface, that's what you would assume, right? But they soon figured out and realized that it was the other way around. That we were rotating around the sun. But it looks like the ancient people may have already known this. And people would say, well, how? How could they have known? Well, I always like to throw out the analogy. If you take away TV, if you take away technology, radio, all these distractions that keep you from thinking and pondering and coming to conclusions, if you took all that stuff away, you would probably use more of your brain and come to a more, better, deeper conclusions about things. But because we have all these distractions, all these vices, we don't use our brains that much. We don't think as much. And so you don't come to these phenomenal conclusions about the very earth and environment around you. I think not all of the ancient people, not every last ancient person that existed was this way, worked this way. But I think there were some people, some of the knowledgeable people, the wise people, the people with the wisdom. I think they observed. They observed their environment. They observed people. They observed themselves. They observed. That was what they did, right? And I think they realized that there were things going on around them, right? Everything sort of happened on a cycle of some sort. And I think because of that, and after lots of spiritual involvement and work, I think they came to the conclusion this is what was happening, is that we were rotating around something, we were moving around something instead of something moving around us. And if you use that thought process or that way of thinking and apply it to other things in your life, other things in life, you'll come up with conclusions. The gods, the energy, the environment, the universe, whatever you want to call it, will slip information into your living and learning experience, and you will come to conclusions about things, right? And I'm so glad that we live in modern day times at times. In modern day times, you can ponder these things, you can think these things, and it's okay to be a great thinker. And to some extent, it is. To some extent, it's not. But let's just say it is. It's more open and acceptable to be a thinker, an abstract thinker in today's modern world than it was, say, oh, I don't know, freaking, I don't know, 500 years ago, maybe. Um, uh, 200, 300 years ago and back. You'd have been considered a heretic, a witch, a devil, because, and really, what all these little nasty labels were attributed to people is because when you had the rich, you had the power. When you had the rich and the powerful, you had people who had money. They felt money was the most important thing, and it could buy anything. You could acquire anything with it. Money, the system that they had created, allowed those with the means to acquire whatever they wanted, right? If money could not buy this understanding, right? If money could not buy this ability to think on these abstract levels, it must have been evil. It must have been bad. It must have been, if they didn't ordain it, if they didn't create it, if they didn't pervert it and allow you to have it, if it was not man-made, it must have been evil, right? And that's kind of where we've got a lot of this prejudice, a lot of this discrimination when it comes down to people who use these systems, who understand this higher form of learning and understanding. It's discrimination and prejudice. and ignorance all kind of mixed into a big old freaking cupcake, right? Um, and that's what it always has been. People will wrap around the whole idea behind, well, God said this and that's like God never said anything. Not that any of you guys are listening to. The Bible has been perverted. Um, the whole thing has been perverted. Essentially, they found a way to control people with religion and spirituality, and that's what they did, like they do with everything that man creates. How to control and disperse on a basis of hierarchy, um, aristocracy, and scarcity, and in the idea behind scarcity, right? So that's where a lot of this comes from. Once again, I'm glad we live in today's world because we were able to talk about these things on a level that we couldn't do before this without fear of our lives, our very lives, right? And heaven forbid you were an ethnic person and you had this ability. Oh my God. Sorry, my Instagram. Okay, just kind of paused out. But yeah, but heaven forbid you were an ethnic person and you knew how to do this, right? Because by default, you would have been a slave if you were an ethnic person, right? And slaves are beneath their masters, and their masters should have the ability to do and have everything. But if you were a slave and you had this ability to be smart, discern, and communicate, well, now you are a heretic because you were better than your master, and that created a whole other set of problems there, right? To where they had to create laws and they had to create routines like burning people and torture and all these heinous little things that these little humans liked past tense to do in order to retain control over the system that they had created. And we'll leave it at that. If you want to look up the origins of a lot of this stuff, you can, or you can ask about it later. But essentially, being smart, the point is being smart, being too smart could actually get you in trouble. That's really what we're saying here. Being too intellectual, should I say, not really smart, being too intellectual and challenging the system could have gotten you in trouble. Even to some extent today, it can get you in trouble a little bit. It depends on what you're doing and what you're saying, right? Especially nowadays with social media. So back to the sun, right? So today being Sunday, the day of the sun, represents the sun represents the symbology of it represents. Um, let's start with some of the surface stuff, right? It represents the sun. It represents the self. It also represents the higher self. But from what I've recently been learning and understanding and working with, is that the sun actually represents the the solar energy, not just from the sun, but the solar energy which exists in everything, right? That energy which makes things animated, which makes things move, which makes things live, right? The what the ancient people would call the Re or the Ra, or from what I'm understanding, the actual term is the Ra'u. Um, it is that solar energy that lives inside of us and also on the outside. And that's really what the sun represented. And this is some stuff that I'm just now sort of coming across and learning, which I find fascinating. Simply because all this time I thought, like, say, for instance, the sun represented like the sun god, and it doesn't. It doesn't, from what I'm understanding. But I think it's easier for outsiders to label something really quickly instead of learning the intricacies of something. So, say for instance, an outsider would say, "Okay, they're talking about the sun. They're talking about spirit energy, but they're not really focusing on. We're talking about that. They're focusing. They would see it as you're focusing on the sun, and therefore you have associated a god or a deity to it. So that god or that deity must be what you're reverencing. instead of that god or that deity represents something. And that is what you are working with, is that representation which exists inside of you and also on the outside of you, right? And then the two, when they work together, they produce energy or a needed effect, right? And so on Sunday, it is actually what this day should be for us, is a day to reconnect with our solar self, reconnect with our Re, or our Rau, our internal soul, our internal solar self, our solar energy, right? The Indian people call it the Kundalini, which is that energy which rises up through the chakras, and it is it's linked. I don't know if the correct term is saying that it's linked to the chakras, but it rises up through the chakras. It activates them, or activates, probably a better word. It activates them, touches them, or it's tied to them, right? So we've got this solar energy that's inside of us, this Ray, or this Rau, or this Kundalini, which then we can use to to build up and rise up through us in order to cleanse, clear, activate, meditate, and understand each chakra or sphere that the Rau comes into contact with, right? And there are 7 of these chakra centers. And from what I understand, there's more of them, but we're just going to focus on the 7, right? Because 7 is the number that we're going to work with quite a bit, the 7, right? Just as the channel name is the Ancient Tree of Life, the 7 rays of light. The 7 chakras also, once again, deal with the 7 rays of light, right? Which is working with light being the Re, or the Ra, or the Re, or the Rau, right? And so Sunday should be about reconnecting with the divine self, not just you, but your higher self. And that higher self, what is that higher self? Who is that higher self? What does it have to do with you, right? And let's just say, for instance, you're wanting to, your higher self is that part of you, I believe, that came here and wanted to do something. You wanted to help, do, experience, contribute. You were wanting to do something before you came here, before all of this stuff in life, before friends and school and family and work and politics and all this stuff, right? You came here because to this realm because you wanted to do something, right? That, and as you went through our system, as you lived and learned in life, you became less of who you were when you first came here, and who you originally were, and you became more of what society wanted you to be, right? Hey there, 887. Welcome to the show. So you became less of who you were, right? And you became more of what society had shaped or crafted. You became a byproduct of society instead of this spiritual being, or light being, or solar being that existed before you housed yourself inside of a body, right? So it's about reconnecting with that higher self. And how do you reconnect with that higher self, right? Well, through these various techniques that we work with. The Once again, this whole channel is about essentially that question, right? How do you reconnect with that higher self, right? That's why it's called the Ancient Tree of Life. The Ancient Tree of Life actually is it's a spiritual or a metaphysical system of understanding, learning, enlightening oneself to themselves and the environment and the world around them, right? And when you work with this system, you become significantly more aware to things. It's sort of akin to like a schooling system or an education system. You become more more learned about things. You're able to understand concepts that seem like they don't relate. You're able to understand difficult concepts more, and also these other advantages like intuition. Kind of your intuition is heightened um, when you are devoted. It's devoted to be a good word. When you're devoted and you work with this particular learning system or facet of life um, over and over on a day-to-day basis, right? Your thoughts, your feelings, your interaction with yourself and with others becomes a part of this work that you're working with. And therefore, synchronicities start to happen also. Coincidences is what synchronicities are. I don't like the term coincidences because they seem like haphazard occurrences that don't really correlate. But in the greater scheme of things, in the universe, there's nothing that does not happen for a reason. Only fools say that nothing, that something happened for no reason at all. Those are people discounting life, and they're just following the surface world or the material world that they see. They're totally discounting the world that exists underneath the world that they see because they don't know how to tap into it. They don't know how to see it. They don't want to. They can't handle it. They don't want to. All they want to do is wake up, continue their life, feel like they're in control, and then wash, rinse, repeat. That's their cycle. That's their circle, right? That's their them connecting with their, not even their higher self, just their base self, right? There's a fly in here. But yeah, so Saturday, or excuse me, Sunday is about reconnecting with the higher self, right? So the sun actually represents the solar self, the Ra'u, the Re, the Ra. And what I've done with this channel is I put on top of that well, I didn't put on top of it. It's sort of meshed together, right? The ancient tree of life pairs with the working of the Ra energy, the Ra Re or Ra'u energy. And actually, if you look at a picture of the chakra centers inside of a person, and then if you place an actual picture of the tree of life, same shape and size, right, on top of it, you'll see that the points in between, because on the tree of life, there's a left, a right, and the middle, right? There's 3 points to it, right? Well, there's 3 columns. There's multiple points on each column, right? But the middle column is what we actually lay over, is what we work with when we're working with the chakra center, right? But it's a little bit different. But the chakra center systems and um, ancient tree of life or the tree of life systems are compatible. They're highly compatible. They work really well together. Granted, you have to step it differently. Um, you have to do things a bit differently. Like say for instance, on the chakra system, the 7th chakra is the I can't remember the name. I can't remember the Indian names, but at the base there's this you've got your 7th chakra, which represents um, what is it again? I'm trying to remember. But it's the color red, and it represents your primal self. It represents that lower part of you that we're supposed to rise out of. It's the base starting point, right? So it is our base. It is our animal base that we're supposed to rise out of. And on the tree of life, the 10th chakra, which is the bottom one, actually represents sort of the same thing. It represents the earth realm. It represents the base. It represents that which we are supposed to resist and climb up the tree on, right? And so that those particular chakra centers and that part of the tree actually are compatible. I'm not going to get into all the rest of the chakra centers right now, or the tree of life. That's a different video, which you can see on the Ancient Tree of Life channel on YouTube. I will be revising a lot of those videos, but I would recommend that you listen or watch the first set of videos. And then as we continue with the shows, then I will add more information to those older videos because we have newer information now. Because those videos were made like a couple of years ago. And so I've come across new information during my time of taking a break. And it should be very interesting. It should be fun. I hope you guys enjoy it. But once again, Sunday represents the day of the self, reconnecting with that higher self and finding out what is it you're supposed to do. And before doing this, the show tonight, I was asking myself, what did I want to talk about? And I was going to create this little curriculum, but I was like, I don't want to stick to something like that. I want it to be more fluid. I want it to be more responsive. I want you guys to be able to ask questions and then be able to answer that question, and then have the show kind of stay on that tangent. But the I sort of lost my train of thought right there. I looked down at the camera and then I kind of lost my train of thought. But yeah, so the other videos will be they'll be redone. We'll have more information to add to it, and eventually we will have our online learning system. I don't want to call it a schooling system or classwork system, but it'll be an online learning system that goes over a lot of this, which I'm really excited about. I'm working on that now, but it's a project that's going to be slow in the coming. When it's going to come out, I have no idea. But if you are interested and you want to get on the waiting list, go to ancienttreeoflife.com and go ahead and subscribe to the newsletter. And then also you could subscribe to the wait list. You can get on the wait list as well. And that's at ancienttreeoflife.com. So today's is essentially, and I want to keep this quick for you guys because I want this to be something that you can take away and remember, and not have it be like some 2-hour show where we just kind of got all into it and it was more involved than it should be. Just remember, right? Today is Sunday. Today is the day of the sun. And Sunday actually is not an arbitrary name. Like all the days of the week have a meaning behind them, right? There's a story or a history, an energy behind it. Each day of the week is linked to a particular color, right? Which is why the name of the channel is the 7 Rays of Light, right? Ancient Tree of Life, 7 Rays of Light. There's 7 days of the week. So there's one color for each day of the week. And there's also one learning aspect associated with each day of the week. And then as you keep going on, you start adding these other facets or characteristics to it, right? And that's some of the stuff we're going to talk about. But today is, just remember, it's a day of reconnecting with yourself. And I guess the great question would be, how do I reconnect with myself, right? How do I connect with myself? Maybe not reconnect, maybe just connect. And it's kind of a hard question because it's something you don't really ponder a lot in life. People don't really go around asking you, well, what do you want to do? What makes you happy, right? Those are not some things that are asked nowadays because everybody's busy with just surviving. And without asking yourself, what makes you happy? What do you want to do? You're really not going to truly be happy or connect with your higher self. And if your goal is to not connect with your higher self, well, then you're on the wrong channel. But if it is, then you need to ask that question. You need to ask yourself, what is it that I'm supposed to do? What do I want to do? What makes me happy? What am I here for? What's my destiny? What's my purpose, right? And I remember years ago, I first started doing tarot card readings, right? That would come up quite a bit. And what happened was my readings were getting to a point where I was realizing people had some of the same questions and problems. And I would always ask them at some point in the reading, what do you want to do? What makes you happy? What would you be doing if you weren't doing this? What would you choose to do? And they never knew. Grown people didn't know what would make them happy, what they would like to do. Or it was so fantastical. It's like, okay, you're not going to win the lottery. Okay. You're just not going to. And if you did, you'd be broke 2 years later. Guaranteed. I'm giving you 2 years, right? because you'd spend it all. There'd be no learning, no management. You would just spend it, right? And that's not what money is necessarily meant for. It's meant for more than spending. Um, so most people just didn't know what they wanted to do. And eventually what I figured out was, well, ask them this is a trick question, right? Like I said, I'm like a sphinx, like a hair on my cat. I would ask them, well, what did you like to do when you were younger? And I would wait. And as the silence would be like over the phone, because I did phone readings or across the table or whatever, eventually some would come back with either one, I don't remember, or I don't know. Most people would be like, well, I used to like to do dot, dot, dot. Now I'm like, okay, well, do you still do that? And they're like, well, no, I don't do it as much anymore. It's like, well, why not? What stopped you? And they would have some reason why they stopped doing it. And I would tell them what you need to do. You need to reconnect with your younger self, your higher self, and you need to do the things that you used to like to do, love to do, that made you happy, and then reintroduce that energy into your present life, into the modern day, into your waking life right now. And I had a lot of people that loved my readings, right? They had never had readings like them before. Um, and I came to several conclusions when reading tarot cards. It was one of the best experiences in my life. I learned what I've learned about health, about spirituality, about metaphysics, about so much from reading tarot cards for other people. I highly recommend, if you have not done so, get yourself a good deck of tarot cards and a book and work with it. If you can, pair it with the Tree of Life, if you can. But work with it. It's great insight into yourself, and also once you know yourself, then you can know the outside world, right? And the highest law of the work that we do is know thyself. Period. That is the highest law. Know thyself, right? If you know yourself, then you know you're well ahead of the game as far as consciousness goes, because most people do not know themselves. What do I mean? Most people take for granted the things they react to, or their reactions or their actions to any situation, right? If I don't know, how can I explain this? Say, for instance, if you're continuously always doing something and you do it on habit, you don't do it because you're thinking about it, you're doing it on habit, then it's unconscious. If you're doing something and you're conscious to you are doing it and why you have done it, because you've done it before and you've questioned each instance that you've been in, and you've monitored yourself, you will be more conscious about who you are and why you do the things that you do. And that puts you a step ahead of the rest. When you make this a practice and you continue to do this, you become progressively wiser about who you are, how you respond, how you react. And you learn other things about yourself, and then you allow yourself to learn things that are externally that will flow to you as well. So I'm going to leave it with that, you guys. I'm going to leave it at that. My gift to you today is ask yourself, what do I like to do? And if you can't answer that, what did I used to like to do when I was a child, when I was younger, right? And then go ahead and drop a comment in the on the video. You can send me a message. You can send a direct message. If you don't want it to be public, you can send a private DM, or you can also send me an email, subscribe on the website, and then send a contact email to me. And once again, thanks for coming out, brothers and sisters, ladies and gents. It's been a pleasure. We're going to try to keep doing these every Sunday. The reason I keep saying Saturday is because usually on Saturday I do my own personal internal work. Saturday is a great day for discovering new things. We'll talk about that later as we work through the days of the week. But it is the end of the cycle Saturday, and the beginning Sunday, the beginning of the new cycle. This is where we get the circle from, and this is also where we get the Ouroborous from, which is the serpent biting its tail or eating its tail. Also, in some other systems, it's a dragon, which is the same thing. It's still a reptile. It still has meaning. But it represents the cycle of things, the continuation, the ending of things in the beginning, the constant renewal, which happens in life and in the universe all around us. Just look at the seasons changing, going from say like the dead of winter, right, where everything's dead because everything's frozen over a cold, to spring, transitioning into spring where things come back to life, and summer where it comes to bloom, and fall when it starts to fall and die again before it's dead in the winter. This is, and that is the great circle or cycle of life, which is integrated intricately into the ancient tree of life system. So once again, thanks for coming out. I appreciate you guys and gals. If you have any questions, go ahead and contact me. Remember to like and follow and also subscribe on YouTube. If you're on Twitch, go ahead and click that like button or follow button. If you're on Twitter, go ahead and follow as well. And if you're on YouTube, well, thanks for being on YouTube. You guys are great. But remember to go ahead and follow and click that subscription bell as well. So thanks for coming out. Have a good one. Remember to check us out at ancienttreeoflife.com. And let me know what you think. Let me know what your thoughts are. Have a good one. Take care. Talk to you guys later. Be safe. And Imhotep.